Hi there, welcome to my channel, Android Mate. Today, we're kicking things off with an exciting project, building a chat app with ZEGOCLOUD's low-code UI kits. Let's see more about ZEGOCLOUD on their official website. For that, search ZEGOCLOUD on your device browser and open the very first link. ZEGOCLOUD is a global communication service provider with powerful SDKs and API to create video calls, chats, video conferences, live streaming, and more. ZEGOCLOUD supports 18 programming languages with comprehensive quick start guides, tutorials, API references and sample code snippets. To get access to the SDK, you'll need to register with ZEGOCLOUD. Simply click the Sign Up button to get started. Let's quickly fill up the details. After clicking the Start Your Free Trial button, you'll be directed to a short form that you need to fill out. After completing the registration, ZEGOCLOUD offers 10,000 free minutes, as shown in the pop-up. Click the Go to Dashboard button to access your dashboard. On the dashboard, you can see utilized minutes and other details. To get started, click on Create Your First Project. On this page, you'll find multiple use cases for your app. With ZEGOCLOUD SDK, you can create features like video and voice calls, video conferencing, live streaming, live audio rooms, in-app chat, and much more. However, here we are going to select in-app chat, and then click on Next button. Give your project a name, and hit Continue button. This process might take few seconds. Then click on Start Building Your App. After that, click on the Created Project, which will direct you to the project configuration page. This is where all the magic happens. You'll get access to your app ID and app sign, the keys to connecting your app to ZEGOCLOUD. Don't worry, I'll show you how to use them, but I'll blur mine out for security. We've finished setting up the project in ZEGOCLOUD. Now, let's create an Android project. To get started, open Android Studio. Next, click on the New Project button to begin. After that, select the No Activity option and click Next. Give your project a name, select the language as Java, set the build configuration language to Groovy DSL, and then click Finish. Wait for the Gradle build to complete, and then expand the file structure. Next, expand the Java folder. Inside the first folder, create a new file named constants.java, where we'll store the static values. In this file, we define two static variables. App ID, this is your unique application ID that you get from the ZEGOCLOUD console. App sign, this is your app's authentication signature, also from the console, which ensures secure communication with ZEGOCLOUD. By storing these values in a constants file, it becomes easy to access them throughout the project. Now that we've set up the constants, let's create the login and sign up activities for our app. First, in the Java folder, right-click the package name, select New Activity, Empty Activity, and name it Login Activity. Repeat the same process and name the second activity Sign Up Activity. Before we dive into designing the login and sign up activities, let's create a splash screen, which will be the first thing users see when they launch the app. This will also serve as our launch activity. To create a splash screen, start by adding a new activity. Right-click your package name, select New Activity, Empty Activity, and name it Splash Activity. Make sure you tick the Launcher Activity checkbox. Now let's design the layout for our splash screen. Open the activity_splash.xml. Before moving forward, let's add images for logo in drawables. I'm setting the background color to white using Android background. Next, let's add an image view for the app logo. This will display the logo right in the center of the screen. I'm setting the layout_width and layout_height to 0 dp. This allows the constraints to control the size of the image view. The Android src is set to a drawable Transego chat logo, which is my logo file. Now, I'll add constraints to center the logo in the layout. I'm using app layout_constraint top_to top of equals parent, and similar attributes for the bottom, start, and end constraints. This ensures that the logo stays perfectly centered regardless of screen size. With this layout, your splash screen is set up to display a centered logo with some padding. Now that we've set up the layout for our splash screen, let's create the logic behind it. We'll write the code in the splash activity Java file. Here's how it goes. Here, I'm creating a handler to manage the delay and a runnable to define the transition logic. Next, I'm defining the runnable. This will execute after the delay and transition the user to the login activity using an intent. After launching the new activity, we call finish to close the splash screen. Finally, we use handler post delayed to execute the runnable after a 3-second delay. And that's it. Our splash screen logic is ready. Now, let's move on to designing the login and sign up pages. Since our focus in this video is on the chatting functionality, I won't be explaining the designing part in detail. I'll speed up this section to keep the video short and focused. You can watch as I quickly lay out the elements for both the login and sign up screens. I'll speed up this section to keep the video short and focused. You can watch as I quickly lay out the elements for both the login and sign up screens. And that's it. The login and sign up pages are designed. Now, let's jump straight into logical part. Open sign up class file. Here I am creating variables to hold references to our input fields and buttons. Now, I am linking the UI elements from the layout file using find view by ID. This makes our input fields and buttons accessible in the activity. When the user clicks the login text, we redirect them to the login activity using an intent. We also call finish to remove the sign up activity from the back stack. For the sign up button, I've added a click listener. Then create a isValidate method. The isValidate method checks if any of the input fields are empty. If they are, it sets an error on the corresponding field and returns false. Otherwise, it returns true, allowing us to proceed. This triggers the isValidate method to ensure the input fields are not empty. If validation passes, the signup method will execute. Here's the most important part, implementing the signup method. For signup and login, we are going to use Firebase. Let's configure Firebase first. For that, open the browser and search Firebase and open the first link. Then click on Go to Console button. Click on Create a project. Give your project a name. Since we are creating an Android app, click on Android icon. Copy-paste the package name from the app. It's an optional field, however I'm giving the project name here. Then click the Register button. Then click on Download Google Services.json file, then copy the downloaded file and paste it in the app folder of your Android app. After that, click on Next button. Since we are using Groovy Build Gradle, select the Groovy Build Gradle radio button. Now let's one by one add the import statement in the Gradle file. Then click on Next and then continue to console. So in this app for user sign up and login, we are going to use Authentication product. Click on Authentication. Then enable the email password and hit the Save button. Then go to Firestore database, which we are going to use to store user data. Then click on Create Database. After that, select database location based on your country. And hit the Next button. After that, select Start in Test Mode and click Create button. Alright, to ensure we have the correct import statements for Firebase Authentication and Firestore database, let's head over to the Firebase documentation. This is always a reliable source for all the latest and accurate code snippets. Click on Build drop-down from the navigation bar and select Authentication. From the sidebar, select Android, then click on Get Started. Here you will get the authentication import statement, which you can copy and paste it in the Gradle file. And then click on Sync. Click on this yellow bulb icon, and Android Studio will provide you with a quick fix suggestion. For example, it might prompt you to replace the current dependency declaration with the new library catalog format for Firebase Auth. This step is completely optional. Now we are going to repeat the same steps for Firestore database. Here we are done importing the dependencies and setting Firebase in our Android app. Now let's implement it in our signup activity. Next, I'll declare a Firebase Auth variable that we'll use to interact with Firebase Authentication. I think there is some issue with the dependency. I think we need to revert it to the older version which we got from the documentation. The issue of the dependency got fixed. Let's proceed. Now, in the onCreate method, I'm initializing the Firebase Auth instance. This ensures Firebase is ready to handle authentication requests. Here's the most important part. In the signup method, we are going to use Firebase's create user with email and password to register the user. If successful, we'll show a toast message confirming registration. If it fails, we'll display an error. Alright, while reviewing the code, I noticed a small typo. Let me show you where it is. Here, in the isValidate method, I've accidentally added an exclamation mark before the text utils is empty method, which reverses its logic. This is incorrect because we want to check if the field is empty, not if it's not empty. In the signup method, after a successful user registration with create user with email and password, we'll store the user's details, like their email and full name, in the Firestore database. For that, I'm using a hash map to structure the data. So we're adding the email and full name as key value pairs. First, we need to initialize Firestore. Let's initialize the Firebase Firestore instance. Now, let's save this to the users collection. I'll use the email as the document ID to ensure each user has a unique entry. There we go. After saving the data, I'm redirecting the user to the chat activity. If the save operation fails for any reason, I've added an error handler to display a toast message letting the user know something went wrong. Before that, make sure you create a chat activity. Alright, now let's focus on setting up the login functionality using Firebase Authentication. We're in the login activity class, and I've already set up the UI components like email, password input fields, and buttons. Let's wire this up to handle user sign in. Alright, let's start by declaring the variables we need for the login activity. Since we're building a login screen, we'll require input fields for email and password, a button to trigger the login process, and a text view for navigation to the sign up page. I'm also declaring two string variables, str email and str password. These will store the text values entered in the email and password fields. Now that we've declared our variables, let's initialize them by linking them to the respective views in our XML layout file. This is where we bridge the code with the design. And that's it. All our UI components are now connected to their respective views in the layout. With this setup, we're ready to add event listeners to handle user interactions. Now let's make the TXT signup interactive so that users can navigate to the signup screen. For this, we'll add an on-click listener. First, we attach an on-click listener to the TXT signup text view. This listener waits for the user to click on the signup text. When the signup text is clicked, we create an intent. This tells the app to transition from the current login activity to the signup activity. We then call start activity with our intent, which actually starts the signup activity. Users will now see the signup screen. And finally, calling finish ensures that the login activity is removed from the back stack, so users don't return to it when they press the back button on the signup page. Now, let's wire up the login functionality to our btn login button. For this, we'll add an on-click listener. To validate the input fields in the login process, we'll reuse the isValidate function from the signup activity class. Let's navigate to that file and copy it. First, we'll validate the input fields for email and password. If they are empty, we'll show an error. I've added a call to a helper method named isValidate. This method will return true if the input fields are valid, and only then will we proceed with signing in. Now that we've set up validation for the login fields, let's move on to implementing the sign-in function. This function will handle user authentication through Firebase. We need a Firebase auth object to interact with Firebase Authentication. This will handle the login logic and validate the user's credentials. First, we call the sign-in with email and password method from Firebase auth, passing the email and password entered by the user. Then, if there's an issue during login, the onFailure callback is executed. We use a toast to display an error message indicating that the authentication failed. On the other hand, if the login is successful, the onSuccess callback is triggered. Inside this, we're navigating to the chat activity using an intent and calling finish to close the current activity. Open the project configuration page, and then click on Service Management. After that, select In-App Chat and click on Activate button. Then click on Ready to Activate button. Now the service is getting activated. In the meanwhile, let's go to the documentation page. Let's now connect our app with ZEGOCLOUD SDK by importing necessary dependencies. Then go to splash screen activity where we are going to call the init method to initialize the in-app chat kit. Copy-paste the method from the documentation to the code. Also pass the constant variable app ID and app sign here which we have created in constants. I think I have made some mistake while importing the dependency. Let's quickly fix it. I made a mistake replacing the dependency with a specific version, so let's copy the dependency again from the documentation and replace with the current one and then click on sync. And as you can see, the issue got resolved and now we are getting the import option. Then call this function in onCreate method. After that, go to the login activity class file, where we are going to create a connect user function. You can simply copy it from the documentation. This method will allow us to log in a user and handle the post-login redirection seamlessly. The method takes 3 parameters: user ID, username, and user avatar. These uniquely identify the user in your app. ZIMKit.connectUser, this is the SDK method that logs in the user. If the connection is successful, that is error_info.code == zim errorcode.success, we use an intent to navigate to the chat activity. We immediately call the connect user method in the signup method by passing the email, full name, and an empty string for the avatar. This will handle logging in the user and navigating to the chat interface. Alright, we need to make sure we fetch the full name from the Firestore database. This is critical to ensure the user's information is properly initialized before they are redirected to the chat interface. Let's enhance our flow to include this step. Start by declaring and initializing Firestore. Inside the onSuccess listener, we want to fetch additional information about the logged in user from Firestore. Specifically, we use the db.collection users.document stremail.get function to retrieve the user's record based on their email address. Once Firestore retrieves the user's document, we check if the document exists using the if document snapshot equals null and document snapshot.exists condition. If any part of this process fails, such as authentication or fetching the user document, we handle the error using add-on failure listener. For example, if the login fails, we show a toast message saying failed to authenticate user. Similarly, if there's an error in fetching the user data, we show another toast message to let the user know. Now we can pass full name in this method. We need to make some changes in Gradle.properties file. Add Android, enable Jetify equals true. Then open Android manifest file. We are going to add internet permissions there. Similarly, we are going to implement this in the signup activity. Now let's set up our chat activity. Open chat activity layout file. Then go to documentation and copy the code snippet and paste it in chat activity layout file. Before proceeding forward, let's enable data binding. Then open chat activity layout file, and in the layout file we are going to create a floating action button, which we are going to use to display menu. After that, open chat activity class file. Here we are going to declare the floating action button. Then let's initialize the btn action floating button. Sometimes, when working with Android Studio or any IDE, you might come across unexpected errors or warnings that don't make sense or seem to have no clear cause. One simple solution to resolve many IDE-related issues is to restart the IDE. Often, this will clear temporary glitches, refresh the environment, and reload the necessary files. After that, set an on-click listener on btn action. Now, we need to create a menu which will have new chat, create group, join group and logout option. Then go back to the chat activity, and here let's create a method first, and name it showMenu. In this function, we are setting up a pop-up menu for the app, which will appear when the user clicks on the btn action button. This menu offers several options to the user, such as starting a new chat, creating or joining a group, and logging out. The first step in creating the menu is initializing a pop-up menu object. The this keyword refers to the current context, and btn action is the button that will trigger the menu. Next, we use the getMenuInflator method to inflate the menu from the XML resource, which contains the list of items we want to show in the pop-up. Now, we set an on-menu-item click listener to handle the actions when the user selects an item from the menu. Inside the listener, we check which menu item was clicked by comparing the item's ID. For each item, we have a separate if statement. For example, if the user selects New Chat, the menu will trigger the corresponding action. Similarly, there are options to create a group, join a group, and log out. After each menu item is selected, we return true to indicate that the click event has been handled successfully. This prevents the menu from closing unexpectedly. Once all the menu options are set up, the show menu function is ready to be called whenever the btn action is clicked, allowing the user to interact with the menu and choose from the available actions. Last but not the least, add pop-up menu.show method to show the pop-up menu when clicked on the action button. Now, let's create a dialog to start a new chat. First, I'll define a method named showNewChatDialog. This will handle the creation and display of the dialog. I'll begin by creating an alert dialog.builder object. This helps us design the dialog box that the user will interact with. Next, I'll add a title for the dialog, New Chat, to let the user know its purpose. Now, I'll add an input field where the user can type the ID of the person they want to chat with. The setHint method gives placeholder text, user ID, as a guide. Then, I'll attach this input field to the dialog using setView. Next, let's add an action button labeled OK. When the user clicks this button, the app will retrieve the text entered in the input field using getText, and then start a new chat session. I'll also add a cancel button. This simply closes the dialog without performing any additional actions. I'll use create and show to display the dialog. Now, the dialog will appear on the screen when this function is called. For this, I'll use the ZimKitRouter.toMessageActivity method, passing the current activity, the entered user ID, and the type of conversation. You can get this line from the ZEGOCLOUD documentation. Finally, call the showNewChatDialog method in NewChat if block. Now let's create another method for creating a group. I'm naming it show new group chat dialog. Let's create a dialog for starting a new group chat. I'll first initialize an alert dialog.builder and set the title to new group to indicate the purpose of this dialog. Now, I'll add two input fields, one for the group ID and another for user IDs. The setHint method adds placeholder text for guidance. I'll organize these input fields vertically using a linear layout. Both fields are added to this layout, and then the layout is attached to the dialog using setView. Next, I'll add an OK button. When clicked, it retrieves the text from both fields. Let's now go to the documentation to get the new group chat implementation. Copy the create group chat method and paste it after the show new group chat dialog method. Then call the method in the show new group chat dialog method's OK block. However, the method takes a list of user IDs and a group name. Let's get it first. So I'll split the user IDs by commas and pass them along with the group ID to a method named create group chat. Now let's create another method for join new group and name it show join group chat dialog. This method would be similar to new chat method, so to make it quick we will copy the above method and modify it. Then go to the documentation and copy the join group chat method and paste it in the code and call it in show join group chat dialog method. We are done here. Now let's implement logout functionality. Let's declare Firebase Authentication and then we will initialize Firebase Authentication to handle authentication. Then in the last if block we will call mauth.signout to log out user and we will redirect user to the login page. Here we are done coding. Let's test the app. I'll be running the project in two different live devices. This is device 1, let's create an account here. I won't go deeper in Firebase because the motive of this video is to demonstrate chatting functionality. If you want a dedicated video on Firebase you can refer the video's link attached in the description. After logging in or signing up, you will get redirected to the chat screen. And as you can see ZEGOCLOUD has managed everything for us, since there is no chats available so we are getting no chats. Start chatting now, text written. In the meanwhile I have also connected another device, and I'll quickly create account on this device too with different credentials. Now let's create a new chat. For that click the floating button and select the new chat option. Then in the new chat dialog box enter the user ID which you want to chat with. After that you can start chatting and let me know in the comments that you want upgraded version of the app. I will then create a part 2 version of it. As you can see we received a message in another device within milliseconds and that's the magic of ZEGOCLOUD SDK. Now let's try creating a group chat. For that click on the floating button and select the create group option. Then in the group ID edit text field enter the group name you want to give and then add the member's email ID. You can add multiple email IDs to add multiple members, separating each email ID with commas and then click OK. Now, we have created a group. Let's test it by sending a message. And as you can see we have received the message in another device. Also in chat setting, you will get more options like list of members in the group. We can also add more members in the group. Also we can pin chat or we can enable do not disturb mode. All this is managed by ZEGOCLOUD's Chat SDK. We can also join group chat by entering group ID. Finally, user can log out by pressing logout button. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If you found it helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.